Hey, it's Bram Duffee with Communication Research Methods class, and welcome back. We're looking at understanding communication research methods. This is the first chapter, and that's where some of the talking points that I'll be covering today reside. I am showing off both books because it's true that you're good to go if you get edition 3 or edition 4 of the textbook, and it helps us really understand more about research methods. So first, let's talk about why it's essential to take a research methods class in college. This class will significantly improve your ability to locate, critique, and use academic materials effectively. And you're going to develop improved writing skills, and it's going to help you present research findings and use your analytical skills, enhance your ability to interpret data and understand those findings. So, for example, when you come across a study on social media's impact on mental health, you'll be able to assess its validity and reliability and critique its methodology and apply what it says, the findings, to your own research or your own practical scenarios. So that's what this is about. And, in the United States, our system of school is set up so that most of the research that you get happens in grad school. So when you're working on your master's and your doctorate. And that's one of the reasons why it's such a big shocker going into grad school, because of how intense that research component is. And for some of the structural reasons of school in Europe compared to the U.S., in Europe, really that fourth year of school is spent doing research. When you're working on a bachelor's degree in Europe, and they call it an honors year or an honors degree. And we don't have that here because in the U.S., our system is set up so that you get 2 years for gen eds, and then you get 2 years to do the immersion classes in your major. So it's just a little bit different, and it's interesting to think about those differences, but important to know where you sit in that, because many of you are seniors. And so this is an opportunity for you to get a jump in this area where some other folks couldn't. And I remember taking this class in college, and I wasn't planning on being a communication researcher. And, here I am. It wasn't necessarily this class, but I would say that it was taking this class in combination with other things that really put me here. Well, let's talk about why we specifically need to study communication topics. Communication is fundamental to every aspect of human interaction. So studying communication topics helps us understand how information is transmitted, received, interpreted. For example, understanding nonverbal communication can improve our interpersonal relationships and our professional interaction. And also, by studying media communication, we can better understand the role of news and social media in sharing public opinion and behavior. So let's define some of the essential terms that we're going to be using in this class. And it may seem like we already use these terms in life already in regular speech, but these terms can mean different things in different contexts. And so for our class, I want to talk about theory, I want to talk about research, and I want to talk about methodology. So those are 3 things that we may use those words already, and we may think we know what those words are, but it's time to correctly define them, especially when we're now looking at a topic like research. So let's look at the first one. So I want to talk about theory. A theory is a statement of rules on which a subject is based, and it helps explain the relationship between variables. So again, it's a statement of rules in which is set up so that a subject has to be able to explain those variables. So, for instance, social learning theory explains how people learn behaviors through observation and imitation. So, social learning theory, observation, and imitation. Let's talk about an example. Think about children imitating parents. One of the most common examples is when they learn that way. So a child might learn to say please and thank you, but they do that because they hear the parent saying that. And then when it comes to other people, we can think about cultural adaptation. So travelers or people who are not in a familiar place and are learning local customs will observe and imitate the residents of that new environment, right? So if you've never been into a restaurant before and people, whatever the people are already doing, you'll line up behind them and do the same thing, right? And so this is an adaptive kind of behavior that helps people assimilate more effectively into a new culture. But this kind of stuff, this kind of framework is a theory. And it's used to better help understand. And so we're left theory in the side, moving forward with just talking about the word research. Research is the detailed or in-depth study of a subject to get greater understanding or obtain new information about it. And there are two basic types of research that most people think of. Qualitative, which focuses on understanding concepts and experiences. And then also quantitative, which involves numerical data and statistical analysis. Most all research follows this scientific process, no matter if it's scientific or no matter if it's qualitative or quantitative. And it's a process where we identify a research question, and we start out, with a question like a hypothesis, and then we go from a hypothesis questioning stage into a gathering information stage. So gathering information might be something like a survey or an interview or an experiment. And then now that we have gathered information, then we can analyze that information. And so looking at patterns or insights. And from that, now we've we've developed a research question, we've gathered information, analyzed data. Then it's time to draw conclusions where we can use the analysis work that we do to answer that research question or to support a hypothesis that we were thinking of. And then be able to put those findings out there for the general community. So present those findings in a clear way. So these are the tenets that push the understanding for what research is. And it is a process, and it's a process to be able to learn and grow information so that things can be fully understood and fully reproducible in some cases. So that is research. Next, I want to talk about methodology. Methodology is the systemic approach or procedure used to conduct research. It involves specific rules and principles that are used to ensure that that research that's going on is reliable and valid. And methodology is crucial because it allows others to assess the reliability of the research and understand how those results were obtained. There's a difference between methodology and methods. And so I want to clarify the distinction because methodology refers to the overall strategy and rationale behind that research project. And then difference because methods are the specific tools and procedures that are used to collect the data. So that would be like the surveys, experiments, and stuff. So where we have methodology is the overall strategy for the project. The methods are the things that poke in to probe and understand. So these terms that we've talked about do take on different meanings when we apply them to research, right? Because, we started out talking about what a theory is, and in our casual conversation, we might just say, hey, I have a theory about blah, 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 and not fully take into account of what you're developing as a thought, for experimental reasons. And so research is the same thing. Some folks think, gosh, I did some research, but that research was looking on YouTube or Google. That's not research. What is research? Research is a whole process of identifying a question and going through a process of collecting and then analyzing data, right? And then whereas we thought maybe the method is the methodology, we automatically think about how something gets done. And in this case, it is how something gets done when we talk about the method. And again, that's more of like how you probed, how you figured out, maybe you used a survey, maybe you've done analysis, which is different than the methodology, which is the framework, which is the framework being used. So it's good stuff to be able to go through and identify, and it's a good foundation for us to be able to talk next about the importance of research ethics. During World War II, there were unethical experiments that were conducted on prisoners that led to significant reforms in research ethics. And similarly, in the United States, the Tuskegee syphilis study involved unethical treatment of African American men, which is also something that helped push us towards ethical reforms. And so let's talk about some background on this story and what happened in our world for us to get there. The Tuskegee syphilis study was a research project that was conducted by the United States Public Health Service from 1932 to 1972. And the study took place in Tuskegee, Alabama, and it involved 600 African American men. So out of the 600 African American men, 399 of them had syphilis, and 201 of them did not. So what did they do? Well, they didn't understand that much about syphilis back then. But the purpose of the study was aimed to observe the natural progression of what happens with untreated syphilis in black men. And at the time the study began, there were no proven treatments for syphilis, but now we know that syphilis is a bacteria that can be fixed with antibiotics. And the damaging effects to the body are permanent and usually involve the brain. So you can imagine that people get dementia, seizures, and also affects other major organs like heart damage. So men were told that they were being treated for bad blood. And that was a term that was used locally to describe, various ailments, including syphilis. But they were not informed that they had syphilis or that the study was designed to observe the disease without treating it. And so even after penicillin was recognized as an effective treatment for syphilis in the 1940s, it wasn't offered to the participants in the study. And the decision was made to continue observing the disease's effects. And this study continued for 40 years without the participants' knowledge of its true purpose. And the horrible part about this is that this damage that was done to the body with these folks having syphilis is not reversible. So once those damaged elements hit, they're not fixable. So it's just a horrible 40 years that this was happened. And so the study ended in 1972, and gosh, that wasn't that long ago. Think about 1972. So it ended because a news article exposed the details of it, and it led to public outcry and outrage, and also a government investigation. And a class action lawsuit resulted in a settlement for the participants and their families. And then in 1997, President Bill Clinton issued a formal apology on behalf of the U.S. government. So this is the nightmare that we think about. We think about the fact that we have the Germany experiments that happened under Hitler, and those are the things that come to mind when we think about how people are abused in research. But no, there are lots of other examples, including one, as we just talked about, in Alabama, where black men were targeted and really damaged. And so it's, again, to mention, it was not that long ago. And so this kind of mess, not just Hitler, also the U.S. government, these kinds of things became understood as a problem. And it also, by the way, relates to some of the mental hospitals closing because there was just less trust that went into mental health, and less trust that went into the research that were done on those folks as well. And so in an effort to self-regulate, the birth for IRBs became a reality. And an IRB stands for an Institutional Review Board. IRB, Institutional Review Board. It is also known as a Human Subjects Committee. It's the exact same thing. It's just that some institutions call it one thing and some call it the other. But an IRB, this Institutional Review Board, it came in to existence to ensure that research that involves human subjects was conducted ethically. And they review, as a committee, research proposals, and they enforce codes of conduct and monitor ongoing research. Every college or university has an IRB with staff members who have diverse research backgrounds, including at least one outside member of the organization to help provide an unbiased perspective. And the Belmont Report is a cornerstone document in research ethics. It outlines some of the main guidelines for research involving human subjects and the respect for people. This all came from the Tuskegee incident. The Belmont Report made that a big feature. And so the Belmont Report asked that we do things like protect the subjects of the research, and also that protection doesn't just limit to physical protection. Sometimes the protection is about their reputation, or something that might get them hurt or fired if it was disclosed or known. So those considerations were brought forward in the Belmont Report, and as a result, it really requires now the researcher to maximize the benefit and minimize the harms. And we, as a result, work to do a new process. And so we have a committee that's reviewing proposals and analyzing, to make sure that the risks are understood, and so things like if we're having interviews with folks who have depression, that we have suicide resources available for them. So if something goes wrong, there's a plan, and so those things are written into those reports. And one of the main things that it starts out with is the informed consent process. And so the informed consent process is just a basic fundamental element of of being an ethical researcher. It's something that ensures that the participants that you're studying are fully aware of what the research entails and also any potential risks involved. So, for example, before participating in a clinic trial, people should be informed about the study's purpose and the procedures, the risks and benefits, and they must voluntarily agree to participate without any coercion, right? So I want you to look with me in the book at an example page. I think it's figure 1.1, where it says sampled informed consent document. And I'm going to ask you to review that document and think about with me how these things are important to tell a research subject and why something could go awry if they don't know, or how it could be unethical if they don't know. So when you do an informed consent, you're telling the research subject as much as you can about the experiment so that they know what they're getting into. And my own current research project has an informed consent paper that you can look at and evaluate if you go to my website at professorbram.com and click on the current research. There's a tab there that gets you to the informed consent that you can see that folks would have to fill out and show that they understand to be a participant. And so in this, we do things that would be expected, like the name of the project and the name of the investigator and contact information, but also the purpose of the research study, the procedures that would be done, and the risks of being in that study. So the procedures, let me read that part. If you agree to be in the study, you'll be asked to do the following things. You'll be asked to complete an 11-page summary survey that will ask you to rationalize and manage conflict. This survey would take approximately 35 to 50 minutes. So it tells them what they're going to be getting into and what's going to be involved. And also, there's an opportunity for the participant to be anonymous. There's opportunities for them to opt out of the study at any time. And also a full disclosure on where to go for questions. So this is a full page in our book, and at the same time, it's a packed document. So if you look at the one on my webpage, you can see that the concern is that the folks understand what they're getting into, and the understanding these kinds of elements of it's just that it doesn't only prepare you for academic success, but it also helps equip you with critical skills for ethical and effective research practices in your future career. So I want to say that from our look today at what is research and what is a theory and what is method versus methodology, all the way into why do we care about ethics and what are we doing about it, and to know that the answer of what we're doing about it is we have a committee called an IRB, and we submit them any research that we are going to do that's on people that we think that they might be published. So if we have a classroom project, we don't need to submit that to an institutional review board. But if we are doing a research project that we might publish or that we might use for anything other than internal use, then it would go through that. So I just want to thank you and tell you that I look forward to our continued exploration of these topics in the coming weeks. And thanks for hanging in there with me.